What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. So I'm going to continue on our discussion so far regarding some of the leaks that there probably are some PlayStation so-called exclusives that will be making their way to PC. Now, my big theme regarding this discussion or set of discussions, hopefully I continue it in a pattern, is that there is something that PlayStation seems to be up to, and I think it's more of an admission of Microsoft's position right now. Anyways, welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're here for the first time, I would appreciate if you would just rate the content, whether you like it or dislike it. Let me know as you basically indicate using the like and dislike button. All right, so can Marvel's Spider-Man make its way to PC? That is a very valid question. When I was asking this question a few years ago, it seemed like I was crazy. In fact, people told me, calm down, man. You're just talking crazy talk right now. And I said to myself, well, there's no reason that this should not be possible because there was a huge PC market boom starting around 2016. I think this was probably somewhere around before we had the first big boom in Bitcoin mining. A lot of people started to engage in all of that and buy PC parts. Then Bitcoin mining never really panned out. So there was a flood of graphics cards and computer components in the market. I think this opened the door for a lot of people to be able to build computers at that point. So many people are sitting on their very medium-sized builds, and they basically can run any game because developers are going to build their games to run on a wide array of different hardware. Now, case in point, there was a leak the other day and it was covered by Screen Rant. Now, I made sure that, in my last video, we just talked about it in a very casual way, but I wanted to make sure that I cited my source much more deeply because, sometimes it's best to just go ahead and do that. Now, this leak is from a source on Twitter, but at the end of the day, the news and gaming journalism, sites are starting to talk about it because it's raising a lot more curiosity. And this one is quite peculiar because on the list are a lot of different PlayStation games. Ghost of Tsushima was seen on this list, which is interesting. Horizon Zero Forbidden West was seen on this particular list, which is also interesting. Now we know these NVIDIA leaks are not necessarily the leaks that you want to kind of stake all of your claim on because they could be just placeholders. They could be ideas that never really pan out because we've seen from another leak that there was a, Batman Arkham Knight remaster that didn't necessarily make its way out. So there are different things to consider when you're looking at things like this. But at the end of the day, though, you really have to concede that there is something that's going on here. And I think what we're seeing is that right now, Marvel, in terms of, their Spider-Man game, is a very powerful IP. PlayStation has used this IP to sell a lot of copies. And I think that there's no reason for this game to not make its way to PC because that is another market that they can pretty much engage in. You see, with the exclusives, Sony had kind of, in a sense, ignored the fact that Microsoft was still competing and winning on their home turf in many ways. Now, it wasn't too apparent until Microsoft went ahead and bought ZeniMax Studios, basically the producers and developers of Elder Scrolls and games like Deathloop and all of the Bethesda games. And I think that's when Sony understood and knew, Microsoft is not playing anymore. Adding all of those games to Game Pass basically increased the value of anybody making their way into the Xbox ecosystem, including potentially buying themselves an Xbox. At this rate, it didn't really matter how many exclusives you had. I think at some point it was a death by a thousand cuts approach that Microsoft used, and Sony had to find a way to respond. Now, it wasn't really a big deal for them. They'd already released the Death Stranding game on PC almost immediately. They had already released Horizon Zero Dawn as well, and so that wasn't necessarily a big deal. But looking at this list, it seems like they just want to continue to do more and more. And I think that the ultimate strategy for them is to make sure that the Spider-Man games become available for players all over the spectrum. Now, bringing it to Xbox may be something that is out of the question, if not will be out of the question because they still need to compete on that turf, but they have had a lot of different console exclusives as well in the past. Street Fighter V, when it launched, was a console exclusive, still probably is a console exclusive till today, or I will call it a PlayStation console exclusive because the game exists on PC. So you cannot find necessarily that exclusivity to 100% in there, if you get what I mean. It wasn't, until later on people started to see, okay, what would this exclusivity model look like? And for the longest time, a lot of people who had a PC and people who had, the consoles already kind of understood that, there was almost no need to go ahead and purchase yourself another you know, there was no need to go purchase, you know, another console, because a lot of these console games eventually started to creep their way into the PC ecosystem. So what can Sony start doing in terms of trickling Spider-Man into PC? Because if they were to do a big announcement, it could be a negative stain on their community. I think that's one thing that they might want to avoid. But at least if they really wanted to kind of maybe just, you know, start introducing that, they could start out with a small 6-hour game like Spider-Man Miles Morales. Maybe because it's a small game, it's a tiny portion, they drop it on PC. I think that's a possibility for that game. Now, it may not be a possibility for the game to be dropped very soon, because there's another huge Spider-Man game coming out, which they might use to leverage some more sales of their PlayStation 5 console. So that strategy may not be something that we'll see very soon, but it doesn't matter. There are many PC players who cannot find a PlayStation 5 right now, and more than likely will not even want to find the time or even spend extra money in getting one. So these are some of the things that you have to also consider when it comes down to it as well. Our PC players going to want to go get a PlayStation 5, and many of them probably not. Some of them broke their own stronghold and bought a PlayStation 4 for the first Spider-Man game that came out in 2018 on that platform, but I don't think many are going to follow that path this time, especially seeing that a lot of these PC exclusives are going to be, a lot of these PlayStation exclusives are going to be coming to PC. They're going to just basically hold their grounds and just enjoy those other games. So I think this question right now is, how much does Sony want to play this game? Are they really in it to win it, or are they going to sit there and be dragging their feet? I guess we'll never know. I guess they'll just have to sit and just kind of wait to see how that's going to pan out. What's even more interesting is a lot of games are now having to bring out their games on all of the different platforms, and even new games are making themselves to Game Pass on day one. How is Sony going to respond? Can they bring Spider-Man to come in and swoop in and save the day, in quote, or at least reach fans that have not necessarily had the opportunity to play the game? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you very much for engaging me. I really want to read your comments. It's interesting to hear what people think about all of this. Let me know in the comment section. Talk to y'all soon. Peace out.